With me today is Margaret Trudeau, a Canadian icon who has lived her life in the public spotlight. Today, she turns the spotlight on bipolar disorder, a mental illness she herself suffers from. Thanks so much for joining us today,
Thank you,
Margaret.
Rebecca.
I saw you talk last night at the art gallery, and you weren't on that podium for 2 seconds, and you jumped right into it. So I thought that we could do that today.
Indeed.
Bipolar disorder is a mood disorder that is characterized by very, very low moods and very elevated moods.
It's mood swings, exaggerated sorrow, exaggerated joy, more than joy. It's mania. Most bipolar people who suffer from the bipolar disorder suffer depression. 80% of the time will be depressed, and people who have the manic side to it as well, which I do, that's only 10% of the time. I haven't had very many manic episodes in my life, very few, but they're debilitating. But the depression is what is chronic and the most debilitating.
Is it like being tethered to the back of a roller coaster?
Yes, you're up and down, and that's bipolar. One of my concerns, and one of the reasons that I have come out and am such an advocate for mental health issues now, is that people suffering from bipolar disease have the highest rate of suicide. They get very tired of the up and downs.
The unpredictability.
The unpredictability, and they think they're finally feeling normal and better and happy, and then they crash again. So with every high comes a crash, and the crashes can get very, very deep. So it's a disease which is caused by an imbalance of chemicals in your brain. It can be treated quite easily. Within 2 weeks, usually, of starting medication, you feel like a new person.
So there is, I know that you have a message of hope for this.
Totally, yes.
If we could go back, what were you like as a child? Is this something that you develop, that you get, or is it?
Yes, I think I first, the bipolar doesn't define me. The bipolar, from time to time, exaggerates me. So I'm the person that I am, that I always have been. I was always fun-loving and capricious and curious and ready to try everything, and the world was my oyster when I was a little girl. I just was a very happy little girl, and it wasn't until my late teens that I first
the first incident?
Yeah, and depression came after, my first bout with depression came after the birth of one of my children, and this is quite common. This is the onset of postnatal depression. At that time, it was 33 years ago, and it was just baby blues. And
so it was, we didn't recognize.
No,
this would have been the mid-70s.
Yeah, early 70s. And I would just get over it. It was just something that every woman, a lot of women would go through. It wasn't that for me. It became a very deep depression, and there was no reason for me to be depressed. I had no sadness in my life. In fact, I had the opposite.
Well,
I was incredibly happy.
I
was incredibly happily married. I had a beautiful children, my 2-year-old and a newborn, and I had everything going for me, and I just was so sad. Tears would just run down my face, and I didn't want to get out of bed, even though I knew that what I was getting out of bed to was a beautiful life, and I just couldn't rally. And that was the first sign. I ended up in hospital that time.
May I ask, how was Pierre through this? Because he was older. Yeah, he was older, and probably from a generation that was even more
didn't understand. Very compassionate, but confused. Didn't understand what was happening to me. In some sense, took it personally, and as will happen. And that's why one of the debilitating effects of the disease is that it does affect your relationships tremendously, because people have a hard time understanding why you're so unhappy. Perhaps you're not with the right person. Perhaps you would have a happier life somewhere else, which is certainly what I